Hi everyone, this is Peter from the Mindful Share Trader blog, and you can get to my blog by clicking the link that's up in this corner here, and you'll find on that site a whole load of free articles and content that will help you with your trading. So in today's video I'll be concentrating on the SPY, and we'll take a detailed look at that over multiple time frames, and hopefully this will show you how I analyse the structure of a stock or a market. So we'll get stuck straight into it. And you can see here I've got the SPY weekly chart up, looking at it over the longer term view. And we can see it's been in a clear uptrend since 2008, the lows there. Okay, now the first thing I look for on a chart always is volume, because volume indicates the activity of the smart money. And so if we have a look on this chart here, we can see there was a lot of volume down here in that 2008 low. And then on every pullback after that, we had these big volume swells here and here as well, which all indicated demand coming in down here, lower on in the early stages of this bull trend. And there was a lot of bearishness around in these areas, but there was people coming in buying on these lows, the smart money were. And that's why we've had this sustained rally up since. Now, if we have a look at the top up here, we're not seeing the same amount of volume. You know, the volume is really, really low up in this area. Now, if this was going to be, if there was a lot of selling going on up here, I would expect this volume to be a lot higher, as you know, the smart money are offloading all the stuff that they've bought lower down in the market. The volume, there is some volume spikes here. We can see them here. There's a little spike here. There's a volume area here. There's a bit of a volume swell here as well. But if you have a look at where they are, they're coming in on these lows here. All right, with the exception of this little high volume spike up here. Now, that volume's coming in right on this support line up here. Okay, so I think that this demand is coming in every time that the price have moved down to this support line. Demand has come in, and this is looking more and more like a reaccumulation zone up here rather than a distribution zone. The exception, of course, was this little high volume spike up here, which kind of has been impossible for price to get over since. So there is definitely some supply sitting up the top here, and I think that, you know, every time this has come back up, the market, the buyers are trying to absorb that supply in there. So far, they haven't been successful. Okay, and it may take a little more time yet. And I did note, you know, that when this correction started back here, that corrections take time. They take time to work through, and this is what we've seen. This has been going almost a year here now before a new high. So we'll have a look we'll zoom into this area now, and we'll have a bit of a closer look at exactly what has been going on in here. Okay, so this is a zoomed in view of that top area of the market. We've got our kind of support area through here. Excuse the wavy line. And we can see that, you know, the price has come down 3 times now to this area. Volume's picked up each time, and it's rallied away from, you know, what we would call this danger point here. Okay, we've got our green long-term channel there. You can see the demand line here and the supply line up here. And, you know, we've got a fair bit of room still where price could come back down to that demand line still, and still keep this whole scenario long-term bullish. Okay, now this week I've moved the channel lines here to broaden them on, taking in this swing low that occurred a couple of weeks ago, and we can see that we had some good volume coming in on that bar there, and the subsequent rally thereafter. But this week has seen a very, very narrow spread bar. Volume wasn't over the top, so we're seeing a bit of no demand there. You know, prices really could go either way from here. We could see another push up next week, or another pull back to this this line here. And if this line breaks, then I suspect we'll see a bigger move down. Okay, so we'll have a look at the daily next and see what that's telling us. Okay, so this is the daily chart. We can see here this is where price came down to the demand line here, we saw on the other chart, and we can see the push up over the last couple of weeks, and then this is this week's action up in here. Okay, so we can see here that, you know, as price came down to this demand line, we had this volume swell here. We had no further progress to the downside on these bars here. We had like a spring here that broke those lows and it closed high, and then the price rallied away from there. And then over the course of this week, we've come up against this diagonal resistance here, and we've gone basically sideways. Now, there's been some, quite high volume come in on some of these bars. We've had a look at the volume on this bar here and this bar here. Now, this bar here, it kind of came down, closed midway, but didn't go any further. Now, you would expect if there was a lot of supply in there that this would have broken down further on this kind of volume, but it didn't. So I suspect that supply that's trapped in over at this level here is being absorbed in this area. On this next bar here, slightly lower volume, but the price closed higher, rallied away a bit more here, and closed up on the top of this range here, but on decreasing volume. Okay, and the next bar here again tested back. This was the news on Friday that came out, so the market got shaken out here on high volume, I suspect, where prices dipped back down to this line and then closed up higher again. So on this chart here, the action's looking fairly bullish for next week, that this could break higher because of this volume here, and it had every chance to move down, and it didn't. And it closed high. So I'd see that as bullish and possibly some more bullish action next week. So that's the daily chart, and we'll go in a bit closer now and have a look in the hourly chart and have a look at what happened exactly on this last day on the hourly to see what the real story is. Okay, so this is the hourly chart, and we can see here that this is the action from the last 4 days here, and more specifically, this is Friday's action in here. And we can see that on the open here, we had this rally up the day before, quite a nice steady move up. Volume was decreasing a bit over the course of that day, which is fairly usual, and then it kind of picked up towards the end. And then as soon as it opened on the Friday with the news that came out, we had this big push down. But look at the volume that came in on this next bar here. This bar just dipped down to the support and closed high, and the volume was huge. Now, again, if this had been all selling in here, this should have closed at the very least down on the low here, and possibly even broken down through this support zone here. But it didn't. It reversed around, and we see the consequent rally that took place after that. And we can see here that the volume dropped off a bit, which is usual once you get a lot of volume coming in at the bottom. The volume does tend to drop off as there's no supply left going up. And then we had this little reversal in here. Actually, these two here on very low volume. Now, this is a test here, testing to see if there was much more supply left in this area here. And because the volume was low, there was obviously no supply left in there, and the prices rallied from there. And as on this last bar, the prices come back down again. We've got a pick up in volume. We've got a narrow spread inside bar there. Again, you would think that if this was all supply in here, that the price would have closed down lower here, and it hasn't. It's held in this area. So I think we are going to see a rally next week out of this little zone here. And we'll have a look at the 15-minute chart now, which is probably the lowest time frame I'll go down into, and we'll just have a look and see what exactly happened in that day. Okay, so now we're looking at the 15-minute time frame. And so this is all the action within Friday's bar. And we can see the big volume as the news came out, as this got sold off and prices pushed down. And we had quite a lot of volume here. We had some big volume come in on this bar here. And then the subsequent bar after that didn't make any further real downward progress. You can see here that, as this tried to push down here with these lows, this has narrowed down significantly compared to the movement from here to here and the movement from here to here. You can see the difference. So buying was coming in down there on good volume, and we saw this subsequent rally back up afterwards. What we've seen here as well, we've got a classic little test here. So we've got this low volume bar here that has dipped down below this level here to test for any more volume trapped in down here. Any more supply trapped in down here. Found none. There's low volume, so there must be no supply, and then the prices have moved up from there. And on all time frames, this is the kind of thing I look at to buy in on. We then had some sideways movement through the rest of the day on pretty low volume, and then towards the end of the day we had a bit of a push up, an attempted push up above here, and we can see we had an upthrust bar here on high volume. Prices came back down on lower volume, back up with a narrow spread bar on high volume, and then another push back down to this same level at the end of the day on very high volume. Now on this bar here, I would have expected if that volume is that high and that was all supply, that this would have pushed down a lot further down to here. And we might have got a bar that kind of looked kind of like this in here, but we didn't get that at all. So I would view that as being, a fair bit of demand coming in on this demand line here. So we may see another move up high next week. But certainly, there is a case for some bullishness in there. And we've seen it also on the other charts as well. So, that's what we have to look at. We have to look at the overall picture, what it's telling us, and what we think will happen from there. Okay, so that's it for this week, and I hope that that's given you a bit of insight into how I read the chart. If you want to learn more, then check out my other videos that you can see up on the screen here. Subscribe to my blog at mindfulsharetrader.com, where as a bonus you'll also get access to my free trading mini course, which is a 3-part video course as well. And follow me on Facebook. I'm always on there to answer any questions. Thanks for watching, and cheers till next time.